Hey, lots of background noise. I'm at McDonald's. Um, I've been coming here the past couple mornings. It is no longer morning, it's actually dinner time here in North Carolina, so it's going to get busy pretty soon. So I'm trying to pound out this intro real quick. Um, I have for you this episode a conversation I had with Cam, who is a crisis intervention officer. It was a fantastic conversation. I learned lots about the processes of when the police are called in to a crisis situation, um, steps they take to resolve the situation, steps they take to reduce the occurrence of situations like that. Um, I had a really wonderful time talking with him, and I'm very excited about this episode. Hopefully, it comes off as good as I think it does. Um, I don't want to babble too much. There's a big busload of people about to come into the restaurant. So it's Saturday, February 1st, 2020. And as of this recording, I'm still depressed, but I'm not dead. Okay, so I am joined by a special guest this episode, Cam, who is a crisis intervention officer in the Fort Worth area of Texas. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. I appreciate you coming on. I think we're going to get a lot of insight that I don't usually approach on my show. Um, I know that in chatting, you've mentioned that you do struggle at times with mental illness, but the the main gist maybe of this conversation is going to be maybe things that you've seen, maybe I don't intervention, I guess, because that's right there in your title.
Sure,
But
sure.
what the MO is, I guess, of when you're called into a scene or called into a situation where there's something going on, somebody who's in crisis.
Right,
Um,
right. And yeah, and I want to say thanks for the invite. It was a pretty exciting opportunity. I was looking forward to it. So,
yeah, this is exciting for me. I appreciate you taking time, man.
no, I'm glad to.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, could you let us know just a little bit about the background of a crisis intervention officer? What's a day in the life of look like?
So, it is kind of unfortunately in police work, we're usually catching up to problems, right?
Yeah.
So it is something that's becoming more and more of a factor at a police department, and we're fortunate enough to be big enough that we can justify like a full-time position. But some
Hmm.
of the cities around me, they might be a secondary, even tertiary position for them.
Okay.
But pretty much the idea being that obviously when an officer goes out to a house and we go out there, we may not know fully what we're about to get into,
Hmm.
and I mean, you can almost argue that almost every problem is a crisis problem, but uh, when we get out to a scene and let's say, I mean, let's go with the easy one, and we get out there and someone is suicidal
Hmm.
for whatever reason, right? Either situational, or they have a diagnosis that lends itself to being suicidal.
Hmm.
Uh, as an officer, we have the authority to basically do an emergency detention. So here in Texas, we can, really, for lack of a better way to put it, we can seize a person from their home if we deem in that situation that they're a danger to themselves or others, and we believe it to have something to do with mental illness, and that
Okay.
we need to do something right then. That if we walk away, it would almost be gross negligence on our part.
Hmm.
So we can force somebody to go to, a psychiatric facility to talk to a doctor.
Okay. And,
So that's kind of that's the real cut and dried one. The other might be a situation where we go out there and there's clearly some kind of concern, but uh, they don't meet the criteria to where we're doing a detention of some court,
okay.
some form to
Hmm.
force them to go. But it's like, hey, Cam, they're obviously having some struggles. Either one of those will generate a report that comes to me, and then I do follow-ups with them to go out and figure out what resources do they need, and help them connect to those resources to really
Okay.
kind of get it out of where it's not the police. I mean, right? Nobody likes the police showing up.
Right. Right.
So, we're trying to get it away from being our thing and help them manage their own uh, problems.
Okay. Okay. A couple of questions about the detaining someone and bringing
Mhm.
them. So, I mean, you'd be detained and then brought to a mental health facility. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Or it depended on the situation. So, it could be that there is a physical concern,
Hmm.
and so our first stop's going to be, an emergency room.
Right. Okay.
But yes, you are detained. You're not free to go. It's not criminal,
Hmm.
but you are detained. You don't get to just leave.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So what I'm getting at is like, so I'm not going like downtown and sitting in the drunk tank or something like that. Is
Right, right. Yeah, no,
yeah.
you're not coming to our jail at all. In fact,
Right.
the whole point is really to try to steer people, divert them out of the criminal justice system
Hmm. Okay.
and get them towards treatment so that you don't get into that lather, rinse, repeat problem that never really fixes anything.
Right. Okay. So, and that's great. I think that's a distinction that maybe a lot of people don't understand or appreciate. That, um, my friend is suicidal, and I call 911, and they're freaking out, like, no, I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to go to jail, and that's just not the situation.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't even, so like if I respond to a scene, I'm in plain clothes,
Hmm.
I have an unmarked vehicle. I'm going to be armed because I don't know what I'm walking into either.
Sure.
But I wear a very low profile weapon. My cuffs are tucked into my back of my belt. I
Hmm.
try to be as down or low key as I possibly can. And even if I got out to a situation where, let's say there is also a crime and it's not a crime we can, so like a domestic violence.
Hmm.
And in Texas, um, we don't get to just ignore that problem. Uh, if there were some circumstance to that somebody has to go to jail, I won't even make that arrest. I will have somebody else come do it because in the follow up, I want to still be able to have good rapport and a good relationship. And it's like, I'm not looking to take you to jail.
Hmm.
That's not why I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a situation like that, I mean, you get to a home and a spouse is battered, and the other spouse is now threatening, like, okay, I can't believe I did that. I'm gonna shoot myself, or I'm gonna, whatever I've got. So
Hmm.
what takes precedent at that point? Are you taking the suicidal person to the emergency room, or are you taking them um, to be processed as far as the
So
spousal abuse?
if there is a true mental health concern,
Hmm.
okay, and even the suicidal, we don't want somebody to hurt themselves. We sure don't want that happening at our jail.
Hmm.
And our primary concern is their well-being.
Okay.
So if they need physical care, they get physical care. If they need mental care, they get mental care, and we take them down and we do the same process where we detain them. We take them inpatient, so they're inpatient for that
Hmm.
evaluation. And basically, you just write the warrant and deal with the criminal aspect afterward,
Hmm.
right? We want to make sure that that person is okay.
Okay. Good. 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 So I'm trying to think back to my own situation, right? I had a situation where I was suicidal. I involved my now ex-wife. I was um, intimating to her that I was, suicidal, that I was harming myself. The next day, there was a lot of conversation going back and forth between her and me over text message, and hey, I just wanted to work it out. Where are you? And me wanting to reconcile. I was like, okay, here's where I am. And I waited and waited and waited, and I was like, no, I'm getting out of here. I went out, and there was a couple squad cars around my vehicle, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, clearly she had gotten a hold of the authorities and said, hey,
Sure.
my husband is threatening to harm himself. So is that a situation where that you would get involved with, or?
So yeah, for a couple reasons. So like even though there is a whole lot of paperwork and stuff like that on my end,
Hmm.
if I know of active calls, I try to respond to those.
Okay.
One, because it's ultimately going to be mine anyway,
Hmm.
right? To handle on just the administrative end of it. And the other is I spend a lot of time talking to people. And, so between my normal day to day and being a negotiator,
Hmm.
if you were sitting in your car and maybe not intentionally barricaded, but you're in the car, right? You're
Hmm.
not out here with the rest of us. I would probably respond to that myself, um, just to kind of it minimally. And I handle a lot of our training, so our officers do it, not because of me, but we have a pretty good mindset about how we're approaching that stuff. But if nothing else, to help provide some guidance. But
Hmm.
if I didn't just straight, hey, let me talk to them.
Okay.
So that yes, I will catch the hot call, right? And respond to myself,
Right.
if possible.
Right. And I assume you're not on necessarily an on-call position. You have general office hours or a schedule that you
I have
follow.
both. I have
Okay.
the fortunate position of, so I'm on, yeah, I get to work, like quote unquote the 9 to 5,
Hmm.
5 days a week, but the rest of the time I'm on call. But it's not like a paid on call, but I'm generally available.
Okay.
Other than heading out of town for the holidays or something like that, I am reachable.
Okay. That's a fantastic um, service that you provide to your community. I think that's wonderful. I don't know what the statistics are. What size of a city or town would need to be to have a full position like yours. I'm in the Raleigh area. I assume Raleigh is big enough, but my little town of Holly Springs, I don't know. Is that are you part of a sheriff's department or a
No,
police
I'm a city,
city? Okay.
yeah, a
Okay.
municipality. So,
Okay.
and some of it, honestly, it comes down to, it's not even just the size, right? You would have to have a certain caseload
Hmm.
to justify the position, and of course, they got to pay me,
Right.
to do the job, and it's for us. I mean, I can pull up some of the stats. If you're curious, I can pull that stuff up
Oh
real
yeah, I'm
quick.
always curious. Yeah.
But the in our case now, like this wasn't a position that happened instantly. I actually had been working when I started with the negotiator team. Uh, I was like, man, we should really like be trying to have ongoing contact with folks,
Hmm.
right? So we already have a rapport. So if something goes wrong and we can say, Steve, man, I just talked to you a couple weeks ago. What's happened?
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So we don't have to spend, hours trying to establish a dialogue. We already know them.
Hmm.
And so I've been doing this for 4 years full time. That whole process started in 2009.
Okay.
So it was a long time in the works of making it happen. Nobody just went, oh yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Let's make that happen.
Hmm. Sure. Sure.
So let's see here. All right, so this was like my caseload for last year. I just got done doing the stats a couple days ago.
Hmm.
So for the year, I had 647 reports sent to me,
Wow. Okay.
and that's averaging just short of two a day.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and just an indication of how significant the problem is. That was 19% bigger than my call load last year, which was 13% bigger than the call load before that, which was 18% bigger than the year before that.
Wow. Okay.
So I mean, I'm seeing like 15% jumps on average, probably.
Right. Right. I wonder how much of that is familiarity with the program, or
I think
is
it's
it
mixed.
okay?
I think it's mixed. I think there's some familiarity. I think our healthcare system is atrocious.
Hmm.
And more and more people just find themselves with not a lot of good options.
Yeah.
And I think there is some societal stuff there too.
Hmm.
I don't know. Uh, what I see a lot is like coping skills sometimes seem to be on the wane,
Right.
and some other stuff, and just people just don't know what to do.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Do you have stats on like repeat contacts? So out of those 647, I think you said, cases or calls to you, or is there like 10 people who you saw?
that would be about the number.
Okay.
Out of the 600 and something, it's probably a dozen or less
Okay.
that would be the high utilizer, or however you want to put it, that are more of a repeat than others.
Okay.
And I don't even call a couple of times a repeat. I'm talking the burning up the system.
Sure.
Like they just for whatever reason they're just a high utilizer of needing assistance.
Okay. Huh.
The hugest portion of what I run into, we'll never talk to those folks again. It's a bad situation. They're getting a divorce, they're having a breakup, they lost a job, and they're just in that moment, don't see the way forward, and just feel like they're up against a wall.
Right.
And after that, half the time, by the time we get to the hospital, they're saying, oh, "Man, that was stupid,"
Right.
and we just never have to interact again.
Right. Okay. So can we talk about your background a little bit? Like
Sure.
what drew you into this line of police work? What, did you have something in your history? Is it you just a guy with a big heart? What's going on there?
So, didn't necessarily. So there were struggles in my childhood. I grew up. I wasn't necessarily directly the recipient of abuse, but it was an abusive home.
Hmm.
Between my dad and my mom. Um so that carried its load. I do recall. So probably the first indicator that I was going to end up being a police officer was my mom and dad would start at it, and I guess at the age of like 3, 4,
Uh-huh.
I would go throw myself over top of her.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Protecting
So,
mom.
like I said, I guess if there was any indication that I was going to start trying to look out for people, that would have been a good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. I'd say
Uh,
so.
and then just kind of, so I eventually settled on psychology for my degree,
Hmm.
and that just has always been more interesting to me, and almost. I mean, there's a lot of feels there, but it
Yeah.
was also I'm pretty logical, and it was this just makes sense.
Hmm.
Like this should be a focus. This should be a thing, and so while I'm definitely empathetic and sympathetic to stuff, there were parts of it like there's a pragmatic reason why we should be focusing on these things.
Yeah. Yeah. So you 4-year degree in psychology, and
Yeah,
then
and I'm working on my master's,
oh,
but
you are.
it's been slow going. It's I should have finished that stuff up when I had the chance, but life
Right.
took me down a different road, and so it's just been kind of slow going.
Sure. Okay. So then you join the force, and I mean, is it?
Yeah, so let's see. So I was older. So I joined in 2004, and I was 34.
Oh, okay.
That was after some military and some other, odds and ends type of jobs. And Yeah, so I started at 34, so I wasn't as I don't think in police world I was well past all my run and gun and testosterone years.
Sure.
So um, yeah, I think it just a lot of that lent itself towards just thinking about the job and interacting with people
Yeah.
different.
Okay. Wow. And so this kind of crisis intervention, is this a program that's been around nationally, or and you like caught on and you said, "Wow, we need this," or had some seedlings going on in the department where you were, or
So crisis intervention or CIT, it really it has its origins out of Memphis, and that was back in the mid to late 80s, where Memphis police wound up shooting somebody who had a knife and had schizophrenia, and it kind of of course that it hits the news and it doesn't go over well, and it shouldn't have.
hmm
But they're responding to a situation as they were trained, and the real issue is the way police are trained to handle a general situation or a person who's just kind of being a jerk is really the opposite of how you have to handle someone who's in crisis.
right, right,
The way we're trained is in the handling the typical day to day is really going to incite and exacerbate a problem.
hmm
So they come up with what's called the Memphis model, and that's just kind of been this slow burn.
okay,
And I think finally, over the last maybe 5 or 6 years is where you started seeing enough of this in the news that it became a big enough issue that departments were like, okay, we really have to do something to manage this as a problem,
hmm
and addressing how we're going to handle the back end and kind of the front end. So that's why I'm like, part of my job is external and dealing with the public. Part of it's internal and dealing with officer wellness. Part of it is, just training officers on how to approach these things.
sure, okay. So yeah, I mean that's got to be. I mean, I assume any call out for a police officer is a stressful situation on its own because, like you said, you don't know what you're really walking into. Um, but I mean, what kind of training is going on for the officers to be able to make that decision that, hey, this is someone in crisis versus this is someone who's just got an axe to grind with his neighbors, kind of thing.
So, it's been interesting, and it kind of started with my negotiator training. But I remember going through that class and thinking, why doesn't every police officer get this class?
hmm
Because the whole thing is it's all about your active listening skills,
hmm
right? Mostly shut up. It's not about you, right? And which is hard for some police officers. I'll admit that, that we're not always the best listeners. We're problem solvers, and and basically. It's while the skill set is particularly helpful for somebody who's in crisis, it really applies to just day to day.
hmm
So we teach a lot of how to de-escalate a problem, and really honestly starting with yourself. So we spend a whole lot of time of like, hey, you need to be in control of yourself, right? Figure out your own hot button topics and
Okay.
your own biases. That's one of the things I'm working on for some classes we're doing next year is, hey, recognize that we're all biased, but you need to figure out, if your bias is you think mentally ill people are violent, well, then you're going to handle that call differently,
Sure.
especially if you're also worked up so that your higher level functions are getting overridden by your more primal functions.
hmm
we're basically creating perfect storms.
Yeah.
So it's, slow yourself down and then get into the situation and then slow that situation down. And kind of be an island of calm that they come to you, right? You're
Yeah.
bringing them down to where you are. Because if you're hyped up, they're going to stay hyped up, and so probably the biggest chunk we'll teach some psychology, like, some behaviors to look for,
Mm-hmm.
what to expect, right? We're not trying to diagnose anybody, but it's just, hey, watch for these kinds of things. These would be good indications that there's something going on. And then a whole lot of just how to talk to people without being a jerk.
Right. Right. Yeah. I assume in any interaction, the idea is to be seen as someone who's offering help versus, I know you still want to be authority and control, but you want to kind of be on the level with a person. Like, hey, I'm with you. I'm on your side. Let's work this out. Let's figure out what's best for you.
Yeah. Hey, just talk to me. Let
Yeah.
me help you. We don't want to go there. We don't want this to turn out poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people go, oh, I read the comment sections on stuff, and they're like, oh, they're just upset because of this. Well, sure, but at the same time, humans aren't designed to do well psychologically with the taking of a life.
Right.
And that carries significant fallout on our end too. So if we can talk through that situation and slow things down and help resolve it peacefully, that's good for the other person. That's good for us. That's good for the department. It's good for society. That's the win-win
Mm-hmm.
of getting there. So,
Okay. So, how early on is it in the program? I mean, are you able to notice in the statistics like a difference being made?
so I think part of the number growth we see
Mm-hmm.
is that officers taking it seriously and the mindset being, hey, we're here to help,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even if this isn't the cool police stuff that you see in the recruitment video,
Sure.
this is your job. And so I think as the mindset has shifted, I think that's some of the growth that I've seen over the years of how many reports get done, because people aren't just sloughing it off,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just document a couple notes and just driving off. Now they're writing things up because something's going to happen on the back end of it. I think the other part is I actually get so. Like using your deal as an example,
Mm-hmm.
and you have this interaction with police officers. So here, right, ultimately, usually within about 2 weeks, right? So if there was a small hospital stay, or you were medicated,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, that's enough time for any of that stuff to really kind of be in place.
Okay.
You would have ultimately talked to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would come to your house, we'd talk on the phone, whatever we can figure out. But probably one of the more positive things is, anecdotally, I get a lot of feedback about, man, your officers were really nice.
Oh, great.
They really cared. They seemed like they really wanted to help. Whatever. I get quite a decent amount of feedback, at least proportionately higher than what's the name of that one officer who was such a jerk? Which,
Right.
you work with jerks. I've got, realistically, I've got people who are less than helpful.
Sure.
But,
That's everywhere, right?
right.
But okay. And so that's really good, because I know being in that kind of crisis or semi-crisis situation, you're more inclined to view others negatively, right? So if the officers responding to certain calls are seen as being helpful and kind and caring, then they really are. That says to me like they're really putting it out there and doing just that, and
Yeah.
acting as a resource to those in crisis. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, I hope so. And I mean, even if it's just they get to go, hey, here's the number to this other officer.
Hmm.
Great, fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. I'll accept that any day.
Okay. So what do you see, so as an opportunity for my listeners, what do you see on as far as mental health for the police force? I guess it would be specifically in your area, but what do generally nationally, that kind of thing.
Um, I'm not sure I'm tracking your question.
So like,
You
I
mean
mean, so
like a direction things are heading, or
yeah, or just, I guess I don't know. Would you happen to know what the rates of incidents are for, um, say, depression or
so
suicide or whatever in the kind of police law enforcement section of the country versus the rest of the country kind of thing? Because it seems like such a high
so do you
stress
mean like
job.
internally to us, like how much of a problem is it for us?
Yeah, for
Or do
police
you mean
officers.
like how many times are we running into it in the general population?
No, no, for within the law enforcement. So,
Oh, it's we are, hang on, let me think. Our rates of depression and PTSD or I've seen that, is post traumatic stress injury.
hmm.
Um, our depression is higher than the general population. So in generally it's what 60%. Ours is higher. The PTSD is higher, and the rates of suicide. I think the last number I saw was like eightfold,
Wow.
and firefighters was even higher.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. There was an interesting statistic I saw not that long ago that the average person over the course of their lifetime sees one is experiences 1.7 traumatic events over the course of their life.
Okay.
And traumatic being, that could be, of course, trauma's subjective, right? But I
Sure.
think what they were shooting for was more of a violent crime, a serious accident, or
Hmm.
exposure to one of those things, or whatever. So 1.7 times.
Hmm.
The average police officer sees 3.4
Oh.
traumatic events within the first 6 months of their career.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So it's a lot of exposure to trauma, and even if you don't experience it firsthand, there's vicarious trauma. So just having been there, seeing the bad car crash
Hmm.
or the bad suicide or a house fire or whatever, the you can be just as traumatized.
Right. Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah.
And we're pretty bad on ourselves. We isolate, right? We start to think that nobody else gets us.
Hmm.
Too many people get eaten up with the job,
Hmm.
and so your social circle shrinks down to nothing but a bunch of other cops. And we can be Debbie Downers. And so if everybody's just grumbling and you get in that echo chamber,
Yeah.
that's not good.
Yeah. So I mean, that mirrors folks, who are in a kind of a major depressive episode, right? Just like you're saying, isolate. Maybe you communicate with a few folks, but probably not. Um, I'm sure there's a lot of self-medication going on. Um,
Oh yeah,
there's the
yeah.
cop
I mean,
cop
I mean,
bar is a cliche, but I'm sure it's
but it right. There's a truth to every stereotype, right?
right. Wow.
So, yeah, the alcohol can be a big factor,
Hmm.
and even harder drugs than that.
Sure. Wow. Well, that's amazing. I mean, I guess we don't here in America we're so wrapped up with cop killings and things like that, right? And police shooting
Well, it's
so and
sensational.
so. Yeah, but that's the story we hear. We don't hear the other side very often. And I guess that mirrors mental illness in general, right? Like we hear about the famous people who kill themselves, but we don't hear about thousands of people who were just kind of suffering at home. And
Right. Yeah, we hear about the church shooter, right? Like we
right.
just had here in Texas. Or we hear about, like the guy with the knife in London. We hear about that stuff, but that's incredibly rare
Hmm.
statistically. But because that's what gets shoved onto the news all the time, it becomes what's prevalent becomes focal.
Right.
And yeah, so you think that's everybody.
Hmm.
And, all mentally ill people, they're going to go shoot something up.
Yeah.
Well, not
Right.
really, not statistically.
Hmm.
Can it be? Sure, but it's actually a pretty low factor overall.
Right.
And then like you said, that really what you have is, I mean, I'd have to. I've been working on a new database, but the majority of our calls, that 600 and almost 50 that we had
Hmm.
last year, very very few involved a weapon,
Okay.
and even fewer. Honestly, man, I'm not even sure. Maybe a couple involved a weapon where it was somebody else that was more in danger than the other.
Okay.
It's incredibly rare. And I'm talking like a weapon, like a knife or a gun or something.
Sure. Right. Right. Right.
So we in Texas we can actually, if we go out to somebody who's in crisis, and there was a firearm as a factor in that, we can
Hmm.
actually seize that as well and
Okay.
keep it for safekeeping.
Sure.
And I do all the weapon releases. I read all the reports, I do the weapon releases, and that's a really low number.
Okay. Wow. So, it's just a question that popped in my head. So, these 600 and almost 50 calls, who predominantly is making those calls? It's not the person in crisis themselves, I don't imagine, but maybe I'm wrong with that.
On occasion,
Hmm.
more often than not, it's a family member.
Okay.
Or, so they may be at the house. Sometimes it's kind of more like your situation where they've said something to someone else,
Hmm.
and then that person makes the call. Uh, yeah, that's by and large the norm.
Okay.
But I will tell you, like just the other day, like literally, what was that? Tuesday, we had a call where the guy himself called.
Okay. That.
And he didn't want to tell us much about himself or where he was, but that was pretty quick and easy to find out. But it was, but yeah, that's really not the norm.
Okay.
They'll send a text, they'll send a snap or an something
Yeah.
on Instagram, they'll post a
Hmm.
picture, just something triggers a third party usually.
Right. Okay. And I imagine 911 is an easier call than the suicide hotline, but
You
but
know, the reality is that if somebody doesn't know what to do or they're having a problem, they call us. It
mhm.
doesn't matter what the problem is. We've had, right? It could be that. It could be something serious. It could be my water got turned off.
Right. Okay.
And of course we're what do you want us to do exactly?
Right.
But yeah, if people don't know what to do, they call us.
Hmm. Okay. So do you know about this, the National Suicide Crisis Line that's coming out, 988? I
Red
think.
988. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Do you know?
fantastic idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know when that's getting started here in the United States?
I want to say I think it may have gone into effect uh, pretty much immediately. Let me
Oh,
see.
really?
Hang on. Let me take a look. Hang on. No,
Yeah.
they approved the plan. Uh, I jumped online. Give me 1 second
Yeah.
here. On Wednesday, blah blah blah, sent for further consideration. I don't know. So they don't really have a timeline on this thing, but I'd say we'd see that within the year.
Yeah.
And honestly, like this even made me think of something. I don't know, something you said or looking at that. There are some departments that actually what they do is a call that comes into them, that for someone who's suicidal, they actually divert that call to the crisis line.
Oh, wow, great.
And then the crisis line vets that and either resolves it, right? They either de-escalate the issue
Hmm.
or help resolve the issue or come up with some kind of a, here's what we're going to do. And then the crisis line can then make the determination of, okay, we either got them through it or nope, the police need to go out there and intervene.
Hmm. Right. Okay.
So yeah, I know Houston. At least the last I'd heard, I think that they do that. I've seen their protocols and their kind of their policy for it. So
Okay. That's fantastic. So, geez, I don't want to keep you too long. I really
I,
appreciate you taking time.
I'm really not
So,
doing much else. So you got me for however much time you want.
so
I
if
finished You on Netflix, so I mean I got plenty of time.
oh, I haven't even watched it. Is it as good as I hear it is?
It's not bad. It's
Okay.
not bad.
Okay. So, if I'm someone who is in a situation with someone who's in a crisis, or maybe I think they're in crisis, I mean, do you have uh, advice to offer? Is there like a threshold that you'd like to see before someone calls 911? If it's just, I mean, obviously, kids are like, hey, I'm going to kill myself, or oh, I could just die, or something like that.
You
And
know, go ahead.
well, so I mean, yes, I mean you're a limited resource, and yeah, we don't want to take anything for granted, and we want to help everybody that we can. But um, I mean, what can we do for the folks who are out here looking out for our family members, our friends, things like that? Like when do you think we should make that call?
I think if you think you need us, call us,
Okay.
and we can get out there and you know help triage it
Hmm.
and right. I mean, we have certain points. We have those thresholds on a detention about whether or not we can make that happen anyway.
Hmm.
So I think if somebody's like, I don't know what else to do and I need the police, then just call us. Your tax dollars pay for us, period, right?
Right.
So let us come out. Let's see what we can do to help. And if minimally, it's if your area has somebody that does what I do or even something close, um, then I'd say let that work. And the main thing is it's not a criminal action,
Hmm.
right? I mean, is there a report? Yep, we run on paperwork around here.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I interviewed to become a police officer, they're like, "What do you think your least favorite part of the job will be?" And I said, "Writing reports." And they're like,
Hmm.
"You realize this job's like 85, 90% writing reports?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess I'm going to hate 85 or 90% of the job then."
Sure.
But it's all paperwork. But it's not criminal. It's not discoverable. It's not. Um, if you go to a future employer,
Hmm.
it's not something they're going to find out. It's I do my best to be, even though HIPAA doesn't apply to me, I
Hmm.
safeguard the information. I only share what I have to share. Uh, and really the only place anything goes beyond me, once it comes to me, is I work hand in hand with the county mental health authority,
Hmm.
which is MHMR here, is what they're called. They, at least on my part of the Texas, and they get a copy of the reports, and we actually team up. So when I go out and I do the follow up, I've got a social worker with me,
Okay. Great.
so that when we go out, it's like, what do you need? Do you need medication? Yes. Why are you not taking? Can you pay for your medication? No. Right? Because if somebody, it's like Maslow's hierarchy, right? If somebody's got to choose between cheeseburger or meds, well, cheeseburger's going to win.
Right. Right.
So if we know somebody's not eating enough, all right, we figure that out. If they're not able to pay their electric bill, we get them connected with the resources to help them figure that out, so that we can hit all that bottom tier, basic needs stuff, so that then we can actually be able to address the higher needs.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, so, what I'm trying to think of here is I'm trying to think of reasons why someone wouldn't call. And I mean, I think aside from without weighing the pros versus the cons, I mean, is there any negative reason why I shouldn't call if I think someone's in crisis? I mean, if I call and by the time you guys get out, like we're sitting around having a beer watching Friends on Netflix, I mean, is there any kind of
Cool.
so
Great.
you guys just like smile, shake hands, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're gonna talk, right? We're
Yeah.
like, hey, what's happening today? Like we
Mhm.
got this call. What's happening? What can we do to help? We're still gonna show up, and what can we do to help?
Mhm.
Tell us about what's going on. I'm leaving that cheating woman, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
or she's leaving me, and I was having a struggle or whatever. Cool, dude, we've been there. Cops
Yeah.
don't have the best. Oh, well, they say we don't have the best success at marriage ourselves.
Mhm.
We've been there. We get that. We're humans too, and I just in general. If you're talking to somebody and something's just not right, you're looking for those changes from the norm, stuff they normally enjoy doing, they're kind of meh about it anymore,
Mhm.
and any of that stuff. If you're looking at those things and you're like, man, something is just not good, and you don't know what else to do, call us. If they're actively, suicidal, they're having suicidal ideation. I mean, even right down to some days, I wish I wouldn't wake up.
Mhm.
Well, no one who's doing great says that.
Right. Right.
So, just call somebody. And if it's not us, call the crisis line
Mhm.
or call, the mental health authority, call NAMI, call, anybody. Just don't go, well, it's probably nothing.
Sure.
Because really and truly, the most effective thing that can happen in those situations is somebody just to go to them and say, are you okay?
Mhm.
And just break the ice and have that conversation. Are you planning on hurting yourself? That breaks the ice. It gets it onto the table, and now we can actually just talk about it.
Mhm. Okay. So in the U.S., it's always a win to make the call.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you watch the news, does sometimes it go poorly? Yeah.
Well,
Is
right.
that our fault? Sometimes, yeah, yeah. I'm not going to try to blow smoke. Sometimes we don't handle things well.
Mhm.
But I think overall, if you get the news out of your head and look at, sure, sometimes things go wrong, but there's a million calls a day where everything went just fine.
Right.
There's
Right.
750,000 police officers in the United States.
Yeah.
Most calls go just fine.
Right.
And I think where I was going to head with that is the more that this has become an issue, the more that they push, which they do, de-escalation training and crisis intervention and taking care of ourselves so that we're not on red alert all the time.
Mhm.
I think it'll get better and better.
Great.
I can just tell you there's very few times where I've run into it as much anymore, especially, so we've hired a lot of new people over the last couple of years, and I can't think of a single one where I was like, ugh, like, oh
Yeah.
my God, like, seriously, dude, come, you need to come hang out for a little while and let's talk.
Mhm.
Everybody has a really good, healthy idea about helping people. It's not all hut,
Mhm.
running around doing that stuff. If you come into police work to do that kind of stuff, you're going to be bored.
Right.
It,
Okay.
it just doesn't. I think most people come in with the idea of I'm going to go help people.
Great. Great. It's not all Denzel Washington's training day, I guess is what you're
No,
saying, right?
no,
Right.
no.
Okay.
No. That's what I keep saying. I'm like, we need to quit doing the recruitment videos that are all dubstep and heavy metal and watching the cool SWAT vehicle jump through the air and all that stuff. Like, yeah, I'm on the SWAT team and I don't even watch that stuff happen that often. It's just not stuff that happens very often.
Right. Yeah. And I guess good bully for that, right? Like
Well,
that's
right, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, that stuff's scary. What do we want to do that stuff for?
Right. Right. All right. Well, you know what? I think I'm gonna finish up right there. And if it's okay with you, I'm gonna kind of keep you in my back pocket and maybe have you come back on another time. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you.
I have too, and seriously, anytime if through the course of doing your other podcasts, if it comes up or anybody's got a question or comment, concern, gripe, whatever, that you're more than welcome to kick that stuff in my direction, and I'll be frank about it.
Okay.
That was when we kind of started off, and like I told you, where because of the limitations of what I can say,
Right.
as far as being representative of the department. The plus side of that is I can be quite frank. So I would rather have a real conversation with folks
Yeah.
and be honest about stuff.
That's great. Yeah. I was gonna ask that if usually I like to give out, hey, if someone wants to get in touch with you, but we're not doing that in this situation. But I'm okay. You're okay with me being a conduit
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
yeah,
No,
awesome.
that'd be great. It'd be great. I'd actually welcome the opportunity.
That's fantastic. So, all right, man. Hey, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking time out of your evening to chat with
No,
me.
it was fun. I did really enjoy it. It wasn't time wasted at all.
Okay, this was great. I appreciate it. I hope you stay safe. You're doing fantastic stuff out there, and yeah, I'm impressed by the work that you're doing. So thank you for all
Well,
that.
I'm glad to do it. I finally came up with a halfway decent response of, I think everybody's worth it. So we want to do a good job for folks.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. All right, man. You have yourself a good night.
Absolutely. You too.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care.
Okay, everybody. So that was the interview with Cam. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did speaking with him. So at the end there, we mentioned that if anybody has any questions, gripes, concerns, whatever that they would like to get passed along to Cam, feel free to email me, jamulki@gmail.com. Hit me up on Facebook, facebook.com/Jamulki, Twitter @Jamulki. What else? Oh, the website, www.jamulki.info, or text me 248-648-1419, and I will pass along your information or your question to him. Yeah, everybody, thanks for listening. Be safe and be well.